We are here for a video that I have had prepped for so long, the Kansas City Chiefs ended up cutting one of the players who was originally scheduled to be in this video, or planned, I guess, not scheduled. He was not going to be here by any means, but this is in the Training Camp Darling series here on the channel. We've already done running backs, linebackers, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and defensive backs. I don't think there's too much point in doing tight ends or quarterbacks, so this is the final installment of this series, unless somebody wants another one of those videos. But we're here today with a handful of wide receivers, so we've got to get into things. But I did want to start with some numbers that I looked up here. Your number one wide receiver by snap count last year, I've said this a few times on the channel, but do you remember who that was? Number one wide receiver by snap count, took more snaps than any other wide receiver on the roster in the 2024 season. That's right, Xavier Worthy, rookie Xavier Worthy, took the most snaps out of any wide receiver on the roster with 757 snaps. Number two, the number two wide receiver on this roster by snap count, Justin Watson with 686. So this is just to throw these things out there. How much potential there is in this group, which includes Rashee Rice for part of the season, Hollywood Brown, Jaylen Royals, and Xavier Worthy is probably your top four names there. Number two last year by snap count, number two was Justin Watson. Xavier Worthy was a rookie taking the most snaps on the team. Number three, any guesses for number three? Juju Smith-Schuster played the third most snaps on this team with 424. Just 424 snaps was good for number three on the team. Number four, any guesses here? I think you would be shocked to know who the number four wide receiver by snap count on this team in the 2024 season was. 32-year-old D-Hop with 356 snaps. A late season acquisition, was the number four wide receiver by snap count. Then you had number five, Rashee Rice, who didn't play starting in week 5. Rashee Rice had 155 snaps on the season. He was the fifth wide receiver by snap count. Number 6, Mecole Hardman with 115 snaps. So last year, looking at this group here, last year, I think Jaylen Royals would have outclassed number 2 wide receiver Justin Watson. Jaylen Royals would have been better for this team last season than Justin Watson last year, just by looking at him on tape. Maybe I will be wrong, but let's get into the training camp darlings at wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, beginning here with Elijah Badger, a UDFA out of Florida, an RAS score of 9.32, 6 foot 1 inches tall with 9.5-inch hands and 32-inch arms, plus 32 plus inch arms, a 200-pound weight, which is neither good nor bad, right? But it's right in there in line with what you would want to see. You have a 35.5-inch vertical leap there for Elijah Badger, a 4.43 40-yard dash, and a 1.54 10-yard split. He did not do the agility numbers, but this is a wide receiver that I think has a lot of potential for this team. He could be a speed guy. He could be a possession guy. Just like Jaylen Royals, right? Jaylen Royals gets a lot of comparisons to Rashee Rice, but I think Jaylen Royals is going to be a plus wide receiver downfield, something that we haven't really seen from Rashee Rice to this point in his career. Speaking of career, Elijah Badger in college. 3 seasons of over 700 yards of production for Elijah Badger in college. You had him 866 yards and 7 touchdowns at Arizona State in his sophomore season, his super sophomore season. His junior year, he had 713 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then last year for Florida, he had 806 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, one number that I skipped right over in these columns was his average. Why did I do that? Well, because that is the big point to be made here. 866 yards and 713 yards in consecutive seasons at Arizona State, but those years he was a possession-type receiver, 70 receptions, 65 receptions, averaging 12.4 yards in 2022 and 11 yards in 2023. Those are possession-type numbers. Then he got to Florida. He had only 39 receptions, but hit 800 yards with a 20.7 yard average. That is a 20.7 yard average in the biggest conference in all the land. You're looking at college football, you're looking at the SEC, and you're looking at the Big Ten, and those are the big boys as far as weekly competition. I think that Elijah Badger could end up on the 53-man roster. It depends on what they want to do at those last couple spots. I think that ultimately in his career, Elijah Badger has wide receiver 2 potential, but I think that he can be a really good wide receiver 3 if he gets a little bit more consistent with things, because you're looking at all of the things that he is able to do on the field. You do see him with 18 rushing attempts for 111 yards and 3 touchdowns in college as well. He can be on the move. He can be in the slot. He can be on the line. He has the size, the speed combination, and the athleticism to do all of those things. And the last thing here, I'm going to try to remember to put a link to the video in the description, but if nothing else, there is a playlist on the channel for 2025 draft picks that does include the entire UDFA class. There is an entire video on Elijah Badger in that playlist, so if you have not ventured over to that playlist, check that out, or check the description for a link to that video. Then we have Mack Dalena, undersized Mack Dalena, very poor. See all these red numbers over here, but a 7.46 overall number. He is 5'10 and a half, 180 pounds, did 11 reps on the bench press, a 38.5-inch vert is 9.06, a score of 9.06 out of 10. A 10-foot 5-inch broad jump scores 8.38. Then you get over to his speed numbers. He had a 4.36 40-yard dash that is good for a score of 9.72 out of 10. Very good numbers there. Confusingly, confoundingly, inexplicably, a 1.63 10-yard split on that. Now, it's an unofficial number, so perhaps somebody just had a weird trigger finger that day, but a 1.63 10-yard split, if that is accurate, would be a very poor score. It would be very impressive to go from a 1.63 10-yard split to a 4.36 entire 40-yard dash. Then you have his short shuttle at a 4.13 and his 3-cone at 6.89. That would be a score of 8.66 for the short shuttle there. I think Dalena is likely a practice squad guy this season. And honestly, guys, this might be one of those occurrences where we don't see too terribly much of him in the preseason games. If they like him that much, they might try to hide him to sneak him through to make sure he doesn't get plucked off of the waiver wire, because someone else might see him and take a liking to him. At the same time, though, I don't know if that is really a threat, because you look around the league, you look around wide receivers, you look at athletes in different places. Everybody has a guy that they think is their Mack Dalena on that roster. So maybe it is not too great a threat that he gets lifted from the waiver wire or elevated to someone else's 53 off of the practice squad. He is undersized, but he is slippery and he is explosive, even if he doesn't sometimes show it. And he has good change of direction, even if he sometimes doesn't show it. But again, I want to go back to that confounding 10-yard split on his 40-yard dash. I don't think it's anything to be worried about, because when you watch him on field, there are times where he gets off and pause. There are times where he comes off the line very, very well, and it does not look like he is slow off the line. This is a guy who, in my opinion, can be a very dangerous 4th or 5th wide receiver on the field, and is one of those guys where if the defense loses track of him, he can be very sneaky and the defense is toast. If Mack Dalena gets the right angle on somebody, he can turn that corner, he can get upfield, and probably not going to break a whole lot of tackles, but I don't think that is really what a lot of wide receivers do in the NFL these days. So I do think that he has that type of potential to really make an impact in the NFL for a deep wide receiver core. Again, this is a guy for whom there is an entire video dedicated to him in the playlist, the 2025 NFL Draft playlist here on the channel, and I'm going to try to remember to get him in the description below. Jason Brownlee is the next name here. 8.92 RAS. So that's impressive for a couple reasons. An 8.92 RAS is a very high score for a decent-sized wide receiver here. But you're also looking at a guy who not only has a very poor 40-yard dash and a very poor short shuttle, but no real great numbers anywhere except for the explosive numbers. So 6'2", scores a 7.73. Now, again, another thing here. I wish they had scores on hand size and arm length, because 9.75 inch hands, 9 3/4 hands, 33 3/4 inch arms. I mean, you put 110 pounds on this guy and he can play offensive tackle. So 33 3/4 inch arms as well. Then you have 198 pounds. I believe he's listed at like 200, 201 now. 16 bench press reps. Then you have a 39.5 inch vertical leap, which is good for a 9.45 score, and a 10-foot 11 inch broad jump, good for a 9.69 out of 10 score. A 4.59 40-yard dash is not great, but we have seen wide receivers in the NFL do just fine. We've seen a few wide receivers that have very poor 40-yard dashes do very well in the NFL, but you don't like to see it. Decent 10-yard split there with a 1.56, which scores 7.95. So how you get from a 1.56 10-yard split to a 4.59 40-yard dash, it's difficult. And a short shuttle of 4.32, a 3-cone drill of 6.91. Not the most impressive scores to write home about there either. He turned heads in minicamp, and he did the same thing with the Jets, where he built a connection and a rapport with Aaron Rodgers. So there is obviously something there. If he is able to step up for these Hall of Fame type quarterbacks, maybe what is lacking right now is just a matter of consistency. I think that he may have out Justin Ross. He has good size, he has great jumping ability, and he has long arms. This is a back corner of the end zone target if ever there were one. Well, maybe not. I mean, if he were 6'4" as opposed to 6'2", was he 6'2" flat? 6'2" flat, then he would definitely be on someone's active roster, but he is not, so maybe it just takes a little bit of consistency. The bad thing here is he likely has little special teams value. He's not going to be a gunner, not really thick enough to be much of a blocker. Where will he be on special teams? That is what makes me think perhaps what we will see from the Chiefs in the preseason is an attempt to shine and shop. He's a guy that you put on the field with Mahomes. You give him a few tosses in the back of the end zone, make him look real good on film, and then you try to trade him for something because he might or might not make the roster. You're looking at that bottom end of the wide receiver roster. You're looking at guys that probably have to contribute on special teams. Speaking of special teams, Nikko Remigio is the next name on this list. Very undersized. Sub 9-inch hands, 8.5, sub 30-inch arms, 29.75, sub 5 RAS score with a 4.89. A 5'9" height is a score of 1.18 out of 10, which makes me feel very bad about myself. 187 pounds is a score of 3.29. I would grade a little bit better in the weight category. 19 reps on the bench press is a score of 9.12. So when you have a height that scores 1.18, a weight that scores a 3.29, and a bench press number that scores a 9.12, you are automatically in the darling department. 36 inch, so that shows you that he is a workhorse. 36-inch vertical leap, 10-foot 1-inch broad jump, those are good numbers. especially for an undersized wide receiver. And then an elite 4.57 40-yard dash. Obviously not elite, scores a 5.37 there, but he does have a very good 10-yard split at 1.57, which scores a 7.33. We're going to get to a 10-yard split later in this video that is absolutely mind-blowing, so keep that number in your mind. A short shuttle of 4.33 and a 3-cone drill of 7.2. Everything that you see on your screen would lead you to believe that this guy is not punt return material. Everything would lead you to believe that he is not punt returner type material. We're going to get to that. Sells out completely to make the catch and is an incredible keep the drive alive guy. That is why I am rooting for Nikko Remigio. That is why I have rooted for Nikko Remigio. Now I want to look at his punt return numbers. Not a whole lot in the wide receiver category last year, though he did have some pretty big plays. During the regular season, he returned 11 punts for 104 yards with a 25-yard long. That is a 9.5-yard average. That's good stuff. That was what you were hoping Sky Moore would be. 11 kickoff returns for 295 yards with a 36-yard long. That is a 26.8-yard average. That you will take that every day of the week. Here's the funny part. We talk about gamers on the channel. We talk about the elites on the channel who elevate when the competition is greater. Nikko Remigio returned 3 punts in the postseason for 57 yards with a 41-yard long. You remember the one he almost broke, right? And then you have, that is a 19-yard punt return average. You take away the 1 for 41, you're left with 2 punt returns for 16 yards. So not quite as great there, but that's still right around his regular season average. And then you have him returning 10 kickoffs in the playoffs for 301 yards. That is a 63-yard long in there for a kickoff return average of 30.1 in the playoffs. So in the playoffs, his punt return average went from 9.5 to 19. His kickoff return average went from 26.8 to 30.1. He took things up in the playoffs. I am rooting for Nikko Remigio. I want Nikko Remigio to make this roster. I want Nikko Remigio to be the return guy here in Kansas City. But here's the thing. The Chiefs have a lot of potential options at those return spots. The Chiefs traded Ihmir Smith-Marsette to the Panthers in a 7th-round swap deal, meaning the Chiefs knew they were going to have a later 7th-round pick than would the Panthers. So they traded Ihmir Smith-Marsette and their 7th-round pick to the Panthers for their 7th-round pick. Ihmir Smith-Marsette, by that point in time, had shown much less promise in the return game than has Nikko Remigio. It might be that Nikko Remigio might get you a 6th-round swap, a 5th-round swap, but you're still throwing in your draft pick as well. I want Nikko Remigio to make this team, so I do not hope that happens, but it would be better than Nikko Remigio just getting cut, right? So Tyquan Thornton is the next name on this list. Look at that shiny RAS score of 9.77, but he didn't do the bench and he didn't do the agility drill, so that is why I do not value the RAS score quite as much. Still, 33 1/8 inch arms for Tyquan Thornton, while he stands 6'2" 3/10, weighing 181 pounds. I think he's slightly heavier than that now. A 36.5 inch vertical leap is a good number. 10 10 inch broad jump is a great number. Here's where it gets fun. A 4.28 40-yard dash for Tyquan Thornton. 4.28 40-yard dash. That is a 9.96 score. A 2.46 10-yard split, which is a 9.96 RAS score. 9.96 out of 10 for the 40 and 20-yard split. But he had a 1.41 10-yard split, something I don't think I have ever seen. I have checked this in multiple locations now, and yeah, everywhere I see it. So someone had piped up in the comments a couple videos ago about Tyquan Thornton and said that it was listed as like 1.45 somewhere else. I did not see that number when I was checking, but that is a 9.99 grade. Here's the question for you guys, if you can find it. The fastest 10-yard split must be better than 1.41 if a 1.41 scores 9.99. Somewhere, someone ran a 10-yard split faster than 1.41. That is absolutely flying off the line. Now, here's the thing with Tyquan Thornton. He can absolutely fill the Marquez Valdes-Scantling role. Run real fast and don't get the ball. He can do that. If the Chiefs are planning, however, to play to open things up, that Marquez Valdes-Scantling role is an important role, and Tyquan Thornton could be a no-brainer to make the 53 if they need him. He's also going to catch some bombs from Mahomes in camp as Mahomes tries to build rapport. That is going to make him a traditional training camp darling as everyone watches those passes fly so high, so far downfield, and watch Tyquan Thornton run under them. It's not quite so simple on Super Bowl Sundays, or on Sundays at all, I guess I should say, and we know that. We've been through it before, but it's not going to stop us from falling in love with that play that we're going to see in training camp. Now, he was a second-round pick for a reason. That RAS score is elite. Some of those numbers are elite. And if he can translate them, if he can learn to translate them, it is going to be great for this team. He has some production at the NFL level, catching 39 passes in his career for 385 yards. That's a 9.9 yard average. That is possession receiver material. He is not a possession receiver. Only scoring 2 touchdowns through his time in the NFL, a 51.3 catch percentage through his career. That is slightly better than Marquez Valdes-Scantling's catch percentage of 50.1. Now, it is always a gamble throwing the rock down the field that far to wide receivers, so the catch rate is not going to be in the 70s for these guys, but you would like to see him capitalize a little bit better. You would like to see him make a few more catches, a few more plays, etc. Again, there is a video dedicated exclusively to him when the Chiefs signed him on this channel. I will try to remember to put that in the description as well. Then we have Jaylen Royals. Might seem strange to see him on this list. An RAS score of 9.01, which is impressive because he did everything. He has all the numbers here. 6 foot tall, that scores a 4.82, but that's acceptable. 6 foot tall receiver is what you want. 205 pounds, that's a pretty good weight. 13 reps on the bench press, that scores a 5.52, right in the middle there. 36-inch vertical leap, a 10-foot 1-inch broad jump, a 4.42 40-yard dash. That is a 9.17 score. That is exactly what you want from your wide receivers. A 2.56 10-yard or 20-yard split and a 1.53 10-yard split. Very good numbers there. His agility numbers came out good as well. 4.25 short shuttle and a 3-cone drill of 6.94. The short shuttle, a 6.69 score. The 3-cone drill, a 7.26 score. Those numbers out of 10 may seem to be a strange pick for this list. Training camp darlings. Why? How would you have the 4th round pick as a training camp darling? Well, here's the thing. I think that what you're talking about when you say training camp darling is someone that you see in training camp and you think that guy is going to have a bigger role than is projected. I think that guy is going to be better than people are saying. And I think Jaylen Royals looks a lot like a wide receiver number 2 and could be a wide receiver number 2, but he is currently cast as the number 4 wide receiver in this offense. I think he will begin the season as the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. I think that he will get exceptional amounts of... I have to rethink that because we now have the verdict on Rashee Rice. I think he might start the season as the number 2 wide receiver because I was thinking that he could jump Hollywood Brown in training camp. If he jumps Hollywood Brown in training camp and Rashee Rice is gone for the first 4, 6, 8 weeks, then yeah, this guy could be on the field a whole lot. Now, Royals has the tools to play every wide receiver role in this offense, and that might buy him a very high snap count as a rookie, even without Rashee Rice missing time. but especially in the absence of Rashee Rice, and that will translate into a massive playoff run and a massive year 2. It will be interesting to follow him this season and see if he can post the same postseason evolution that we saw from both Rice and Worthy. Both of those guys stepped their game up in the postseason. He is often criticized as not sudden, but that 10-yard split is a really good number, and if he can learn to translate his ability to start fast onto the field, he will, if he can do that more consistently, he could be very productive very quickly. That is all I have for this video, guys. The Training Camp Darling series is done. This is the Training Camp Darlings wide receiver video. Again, check the description, check the playlists on the channel for those videos. That's all I have for this video. The Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, so if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.